is good, peeps? What is good? Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Hope it's starting off well for you. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. We're in the thick of it here. In the thick of it. It is raining here in New York City. You'll hear it pinging the AC here. New animation here. Seeing for the first time. Rendered this last night, it finished this morning. Cheers to all the coffee drinkers out there. Cheers, cheers. Monday, September 18, 2023. We're out here doing it. We're out here doing it. 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wherever you're tuning in, it's right now. And that's all that matters, that it's right now. All that matters. Appreciate you hanging out. Yeah, the lighting's a little different. We got a little alien friend back there. Yeah, I guess this is gonna be kind of wintertime lighting here. We'll see. But, alright, let's pull this up. Still doing a few things here. Running a few minutes late. I wanted to be live right at 11, but it just didn't work out that way. Colorful Carol in the chat. Happy Monday, Colorful. Monday mindset. Robe reading and motivation. I'm also going to be recording the next episode of the podcast live here, so you'll get an early peek of that this week. Looks good, sounds good. That's all that matters. I appreciate that. That helps a lot, so I don't have to pull it up. Post it here on the community. On YouTube. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. Appreciate you hanging out on whatever platform. Bleace art on all socials. Listening to some lo-fi girl. And playing the latest animation. Annie Root 60,000. What is up, friend? How you doing? Happy day. Happy day to you. Hope it's going well. Hope your start of the week is going well. Hope your right now is going well. Appreciate you tuning in. Hope it's going well. Just getting started here. Just getting started. About to get into it. We'll go off on this. And some of it is kind of from yesterday. I was writing a bit yesterday and kind of coming up with what I wanted to do for the next episode of the Indefatigable Artist Podcast, where I wanted to take it, what I wanted to talk about. And it, for this week, is coinciding with what I'm doing on stream. So I felt that it would be a good time to just record it on stream here. So give me 1 second, I have to mute. Okay, I didn't want it to screw up there. All right, and let me pull this up so I can record it. Certain things were just domino effect. Set up a new schedule for myself. This is day 1 of this new schedule, so making some minor adjustments. I kind of started the schedule last week, kind of feeling it out, but this is the official start of a new schedule for myself for the rest of the month. For the rest of the month, close it out here on September. So if you're not following on all socials, you should, because we're taking it up a notch here. We're taking it up a notch to close out this month. Made some decisions, and we're going to be executing that with conviction the rest of this month at least. After that, I'm going to have to readjust yet again, because the only constant in life is change. Change and adaptability. You have to adapt to given circumstances. Episode 35. Episode 35, people. 35 episodes deep. And I used this opportunity. Friday, I was really booked on a lot of things going on, so I had to push the episode back. And I had been wanting to start recording the podcast and putting it out on Mondays. It just worked out with my schedule of doing it on Fridays. Realizing that Mondays is the best day to put out new podcast episodes, Sunday Mondays. So Monday, I'm going to be putting out the new episode starting now. So we kind of made a little adjustment there with the podcast. And during this change, realizing that I could, let's do it on stream. Let's talk about it on stream. It's what we've been doing on stream here, the robe readings. Feels so good after these streams to share reading with you, to get inspiration from others of what they're reading. So yeah, it's feel good, and I just wanted to talk about it on the podcast as well. Start the record, and I'm just going to dive into it. Please feel free to share in the chat anything you want, and I will get to it after I kind of do this piece. I do like to write these episodes out and kind of just go with it. It's kind of like training wheels a little bit, as this is new for me. Kudos to those that just riff. It's a lot, and a lot to have on your mental there. And I know some podcasts, it's more of like wandering thought. I like to keep it a little tight, and respectful of people's time, and not make it too long. Each episode is about 20 to 40 minutes. This one will be about maybe 25. So yeah. We'll get into it. If you follow at Bleace Art on Twitter or Instagram, you've seen I've been pulling out my spooky reading books. We're gonna start that today. Do a little spooky reading here. I've got a bunch of spooky books, and I like to focus on books that were made into films that are based on novels. I just find it very fascinating. And myself, I really like scary movies and stuff. I like psychological thrillers. And when you read in these characters, Silence of the Lambs being one, when you're reading those chapters on Hannibal and seeing things from different perspectives, a book really seeps into that. And more so than a film, I think. There's different levels of how something can affect you, but I really see books adding that extra element that really just lingers with you. And Thomas Harris is a great writer, and one who takes years to write a book and really thinks it out. I like Silence of the Lambs book better than the Red Dragon. But I really like the Red Dragon movie, I think, better than Silence of the Lambs movie. So it's kind of like a flip for me, where I think the Silence of the Lambs book is really good. I'm not saying the movie isn't good, but the Red Dragon movie is just so good. But the book, it's the first book, but it was the second one made. The book, I felt like he was way too analytical and trying to be too realistic in the dialogue, and it read less like a fiction and more like a non-fiction. So I guess I didn't know that going into it, because I had read Silence of the Lambs first and then read that one, and I was just, it's a dense read, especially in the beginning. You got to really like that stuff. So if you really like it, then you'll probably like it. But Silence of the Lambs read a lot smoother for me. Won't be reading all of the books on stream, obviously, but parts of it. I pulled out the 6th book of Harry Potter as well, because there's a chapter in there that is not in the movie. I think it was probably too dark to put in the movie, but there's a dream sequence in there, and I think it's the best chapter of my favorite chapter of all the books. And I was devastated when they didn't put that in the movie, because it was like, that scene is so good. It was so good, and it just sticks with you. It was haunting. It was J.K. Rowling going to a dark place with Voldemort as a kid, and oh man, it's just so good. So I want to read that, and then I want to read some nonfiction as well. I've pulled out some nonfiction that inspired either TV shows or inspired, like Dr. James Gilligan was on set of Shutter Island, and he wrote the Book of Violence, and Martin Scorsese had him on set while filming and was talking to them, and so was Leonardo DiCaprio during filming of Shutter Island, and they were referencing that book a lot, of how psychiatric hospitals would have been at that time period, and how different wards would have talked to each other, how different patients would have interacted with each other, just a lot of nuances. And so they referenced him and his book, so I want to bring that book up as well. Inside the Criminal Mind, Anatomy of Evil, because truth is much stranger than fiction. There's one, talking about spooky readings here, there's one story in there that really hasn't been made into a good movie, and it's kind of surprising to me because the story is so crazy, so shocking of what happened that I am surprised that they haven't made a movie like that, because man, that story is wicked. I want to read it during spooky season. You know, spooky season's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. So we're going to get into it starting today. But first, we're going to do Indefatigable Artist Podcast. Some motivation, some Monday motivation. Let's fucking go. Whatever you are going to do it well, do it consciously, and with enthusiasm. With enthusiasm. I'm gonna rewind that back. Actually, that was a cool part. Sorry, I'm just gonna pause this just for the quick thumbnail. You know, gotta do what we gotta do here. There we go. Sorry, where were we? We were here. And if we weren't there, now we are. Alright, I'm gonna turn this off. Even though we're still gonna get some of that patter noise. Keep calm. Yeah. Alright. I gotta mute the music because I don't want that to get flagged in the podcast. Check. Okay. You're now in meditation mood. Here we go. Episode 35. Robe Readings. Making reading and writing cool in 2023. And yes, we can. Yes, you can read something. Anything. What is it you want to do in this life? Certainly, there must be something you want from this life. Go out and find someone who has done it and read about them. Maybe not done exactly what you want to do, but in the field. Not only will you learn something applicable to your life, but the simple act of reading itself can reduce stress, calm your mind, ease the tension in your muscles, get your heart rate down. Just as you can read anything you want, you can write anything you want. If I can energize just one person to write down just one word, even if it's just one word, I will deem this podcast a success. Now, I've already done this. I've already inspired people to write one word. But today is a new day. This is a new episode of the Indefatigable Artist Podcast. So we have another person we need to energize to write something down. Stop getting in your own way. That reflexive voice in your head that just came up with an excuse to deflect from this task, giving you a lousy excuse as to why you can't read or write something. I have to do this. I have to do that. I don't have time. No one has time. Time passes us all by. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Decide what to do with that time. Write out your schedule and stick to it. Hold yourself accountable to that schedule. In the short term, there may be a little pain, a little stress to hold yourself accountable. But in the long run, it allows you to hit these free flow moments where you can really let your mind dive deep into whatever it is you're doing. You can be fully present. You can give all of your mental focus to the task at hand or the person you're talking to. You won't be thinking in the back of your head, I have to do this or I have to do that. You've written it down. You know that it's going to get done, or you've handled it already. You've faced hard truths and you've got it done, out of the way. Rip the Band-Aid off. I know I'm a big procrastinator myself on things I don't want to do. Not saying that we don't all have that. We don't all have that task that we've put along. But put that in there, and why haven't you done that? You won't be thinking I have to do this or that, because this or that is in your schedule and you've made time for that. Right now, in this moment, is not the time for this or that. Right now is the time for you. And it's okay to take time for you. It's in your schedule. This is me time. And everything else in the universe, in this planet, can fuck off. This is me time. I am taking this time because it betters my mental health, and therefore I can put out better energy later on. The next time I have a stressful situation, I can deal with it more progressively, more positively. I won't snap. I won't let my emotions get the better of me and allow me to act out and make the situation worse. Getting a flat tire, then breaking my hand punching the car, what good does that do? Does that solve the problem? No. It makes it worse because now I have to go to the hospital. You choose to get upset and to stay mad. An incident is perspective. The incident just is. It's just a flat tire. How you perceive it will determine your conscious emotional reaction. What is your default to a stressful situation? How do you choose to deal with a stressful situation? I've had to ask myself this and continue to ask myself this every time I encounter a stressful situation. My default was to just get pissed off. Get pissed off at the incident, get pissed off at anyone around me. And what good did that do? Did that help the situation? Did it make it better? I felt like it relieved stress, but it just adds stress. In these moments, I have to pause. I have to close my eyes if I can, take a deep breath, realize that I'm in control of my thoughts. I am in control of my emotions. I can't let them get the better of me. I can't look at them like some mountain that I can't climb. No. My thoughts and my emotions are mountains I can climb. I can conquer them. And it's through writing and reading why I've come to this point. And continue to practice, continue to practice, continue to practice. It's incessant. It's incessant. It's incessant. It's never ending. As much as you wake up, that's why I believe we're doing something special with these robe reading streams. I feel it in my very being. I believe we are going to make reading cool for human beings who have forgotten entirely about reading in this digital age. As there is so much noise. The second that we wake up, we welcome in the noise with eyes barely open, mind barely awake from its overnight subconscious adventures, and now is being thrown into the algorithmic abyss. Down the algorithmic abyss, the mind goes, feverishly swiping down the infinite timeline image after image, video after video, text after text. What's next? More. You aren't doing enough. The other person has more than you, is doing more than you. Look at them. They're always active. Are you even active right now? What are you doing if you aren't spending time posting how much you are doing? If you're actively doing something, you should be posting about it. What the fuck are you even doing if you're not posting about it? And I am saying this as a content creator. So these things I think about often. What effect is the content that I'm creating having? Is it adding to this problem? What effect am I having on those who encounter Bleace? Any effect at all? And that is where I come back to the belief that we are doing something special with these robe reading streams. I feel it. I truly feel it more than I've felt it in all of these 3 years, almost 3 years streaming. Feel good. And I believe that if it's making me feel good, that it can make others feel just as good. Getting it out there. Asking others to express themselves. They don't even have to share it with anybody. I'm not asking you to share. It's for you. It's for you. No one has to read that. No one has to read it if you don't want. You can get to that level of sharing. But to start out, don't think about that. That's blocking you of getting out your thoughts of, oh, what if someone reads this or whatever. Delete it right after. If you're that afraid of someone reading it, delete it right after. No one has to see it. But the act of writing it out, the act of writing your thoughts out, will alleviate some anxiety from you, will get you over that past situation that you're still choosing to hold on to. You'll see it from a new perspective. It lessens the current obstacles that you're dealing with. What if this happens? So what? Each and every day I wake up, I choose to wake up with a purpose. I want to leave something behind, even if I have other obligations. We all have to keep the lights on. But schedule out that time, that you time. Be completely selfish with that you time. For content creation, I feel I have to cater to the algorithm so it'll push my stuff out to viewers who will appreciate it. It's kind of a game you have to play in learning how your creations can fit into these various platforms. It's a science all on its own. So you're trying to learn these platforms, which are varied. Then within them, they are updating them all the time. And at the time I feel like I, finally get it figured out, the platform makes an update. Now, what was working before isn't working now. I have to update what I'm doing just slightly, but enough to notice the difference. And coincide that with also learning who you are as an artist and how best to spend your time. I just like to create. I just like to be constantly just creating and self-expression in a multitude of ways. But that doesn't necessarily translate to these platforms because you're not catering to what works for that platform. And so it's like this balance. It's like you can still have your creation that you're doing, but if you want to translate that on social media platform, you have to adjust it accordingly. So it's been like learning different languages. You're learning the language of creativity, of art, and how you can transform your energy into these creations. And then it's taking that and putting that on a platform to hopefully spread that energy out, to hopefully get that in front of others It's a lot of learning. Some people, it's like, it feels like sometimes it's like a slot machine of you're just pulling that lever every time you post, and hopefully you hit the jackpot, and a lot of people see it. And some people have it figured out. They have great content. It gets spread out there. I'm trying to figure out how best what I want to do fits how these platforms are. And trying to be as transparent and vulnerable as I can be to hopefully help others who are doing the same. And as an artist, I become one, not with any gifted talents, as I don't feel I have any. I just have hard work. Indefatigable artist, persisting tirelessly. That is what carried me to this point. That is what has gotten me where I am right here, right now. Now, having these different art forms that I like to do, these different mediums, writing, painting, drawing, 3D animation, virtual reality building, graphic design, video editing, I've spread myself out to these different things. Spread myself out onto different social media platforms at the same time. It's very spread. And it's like, it felt like a rubber band being stretched. How far can that rubber band go? How elastic is your mind before it snaps? And I had a moment where it just snapped for me, and I was like, I can't be this spread out. I have to bring it in. I have to take this stretched out rubber band that's so tight. And when I say so tight, the stress is so tight of trying to do this. You're trying to run up these different staircases. Yeah, one step at a time, going up that staircase, that staircase, that staircase, that staircase. You get fatigued. You're pulled so tight at the same time running. So it's like you're running with these rubber bands on your legs. I'm now simplifying, and it's alleviated this weight on my shoulders, this choking of creativity, this choking of stress that I've put on myself, this self-imposed stress of, at the same time, dealing with this, of having such expectations of myself and feeling that I have failed those expectations, of not living up to my own expectations, of not being where I want to be as an artist, as a creator. Having some self-reflection of why haven't I got to that level? Why haven't I lived up to my own expectation? Why do I feel like I failed? Very hard on myself. Then causes even more stress, more panic attacks, which is not good for creativity. Stress is the silent killer. It's also the killer of ideas and creation. David Lynch says as much in his masterclass that artists should take time out of their day to daydream. Again, scheduling time for yourself. Schedule it out. Take that Sunday. Take a day off, whatever day that may be. It's during the week, but take that day off. Sit there with a digital calendar and a list and write down all the things you have to do. They may not be things you want to do, but things you have to do. Schedule it all out. Get it all out there. Start realizing that, I would have time if I did that. Everyone has 24 hours in a day. Schedule it out. So, as I am this stretched rubber band and I've snapped, now I'm back into this little rubber band that's, flexible. I took a deep breath, began pondering how to solve this problem, overcoming these obstacles to climb that mountain. Climb that mountain that I see. I've seen this mountain for years now. I thought I have been climbing it, which I have. There's different plateaus. There's different hills you have to climb. There's unforeseen rocks in the road, sticks in the road, potholes, what have you. I shouldn't probably be admitting all this as a content creator. I should be coming to this as I have it all figured out. I know exactly what I'm doing. Why else would you be watching if you didn't have it figured out? I should be giving advice. I should be teaching. But I'm teaching through my own learning process. I'm kind of talking it out here. Which brings me back to the top. Back here to robe readings. So it was in this moment of feeling too thinned out, realizing I have 24 hours. What am I going to leave behind in this 24 hours if this is the last 24 hours that I have? And really, we only have 2 minutes to live. If I don't take another breath for 2 minutes, that's it. Or however many minutes. We live breath to breath. Robe readings. This is my passion. When I stripped it all down, if everything I created was deleted, all the digital work, everything I put out deleted, all my books burned, the energy that I chose to give in the right now, using tools that I have before me, am I using them in the most intelligent way possible? Will me 20 years from now look back and say, "You idiot, why weren't you doing this?" I like how Tony Robbins talks about the fly hitting the window, trying to get out. When I read that, it was like, yes, that's fucking how I have felt. I am working so hard, but I'm flying against that window, and I'll never get through that window just doing that. You have to stop. And when the fly stops to analyze the situation, realizes that window's closed, he can fly away and go find the open window. Another approach. I do have ambitions to keep creating in various outlets, but I want to focus one step, one goal, one staircase, one mountain at a time. I've been trying to climb multiple mountains all at once. I didn't see that. It took me a long time to see that. Okay, I have that destination. I see it, but I've climbed over here, climbed over here. It's like I haven't been going exactly towards that. I've been kind of venturing off all on these side paths. Now it's time to go straight there. The closest distance between 2 points is a straight line. I want to focus and be singly focused on this one goal. I want to envision it so powerfully where I can see it every time I close my eyes. I can see that. And it's energy I see. It's me spreading my live poetry. I'm a poet at the beginning. That's what sent me off on this. It's finding my voice. This has been a learning process too, of getting in front of the camera like this. You think this comes naturally to me? It doesn't. Takes a lot to come on here. Haven't had a haircut in a while. Not shaven. But we're just doing it. We're just doing it. I'm getting out of my own way of saying that could be used as an excuse as to not stream today. I don't look the way I want to look. I am not looking the best. Who gives a fuck? Those who mind don't matter. Those who matter don't mind. Why am I not at that location I see when I close my eyes? Why am I not there when I've worked so hard and tried so many things to get there? And answering that question, I found myself, found what it is I want, and I'm now setting in motion a plan that I will execute each and every single day to whatever extent that I can. And I like being transparent with anyone taking the time to listen. I feel that being vulnerable as I am right now will help others along their creative journey. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay not to have it all figured out. Because guess what? No one has it figured out. We're just one planet around one star, which is one of a billion trillion stars, and something we call the universe, which has black holes that we have merely just discovered, let alone traveled through. So what are we doing? No one has it figured out, and it hurts too much to think about, so it's better to just watch Big Brother and think about who is dating whom. Everything we think about is a choice. The question then, is it a choice made consciously by you or someone else? Why are you choosing to think about that? Did you see it on the timeline? Did you see it on the news? Who initially said those words that you're saying in your head? Where did that phrase come from that you say without thinking? Why are you getting upset at something you saw on the timeline or on the television screen? Why are you choosing to let it arouse anger? If too many people realize that they can control their thoughts, this may not be good for those who are trying to manipulate human behavior to compulsively buy inanimate objects until they go bankrupt. The poor kid had high ACT and SAT scores, but a low emotional intelligence score, and ended up unaliving himself and being turned down by after being turned down by a girl he had a crush on for years. Or he was bullied to the point that he snapped and shot kids at school. Putting all of these highly distracted, emotionally deprived kids all in one building, making them sit in desks, all of that energy, all of the hormones raging, supervised by overworked and underappreciated teachers, test after test, test score after test score, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next, test. When meditation class? When an hour pause to teach kids they can control their thoughts, that they can choose what they focus their mental energy on? That failure is not ultimate, that it's yet another step along the way. That another person's words are projections, and deflections from their own ego. Behind every bully is a fragile ego afraid to be exposed, deathly afraid of being made to feel vulnerable. Vulnerability is death to the ego, when it's actually a strength for the individual. This is what drives me in this podcast. This is what drives me to want to create a more emotionally intelligent world. I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I am a creative, and I know the effects that creating has on the mind. I understand that we need to be having this conversation at the dinner table more than we are right now in 2023. We are the product of millions of years of evolution. We need to start fucking acting like it. How is it that I can read a quote from Einstein in 1945 and have it perfectly applied to our current political situation here in the U.S.? We have made technological advancements, yes, but how many emotional advancements have we made? Surely we're more emotionally advanced than we were 100 years ago. Certainly is the case, but we are far from where we could be. We learn all of this external information in school, U.S. history, chemistry, world history. What about human psychology? I know there are schools that teach it. There's always exceptions. I'm talking more on a broad scale and having this become more normalized in schools. Teach the youth early how to deal with their emotions, how to deal with stressful situations so they can better handle them in the short term, but also as adults. All of what I do and have done is provide a perspective that I wish I had when I was young. I'm talking to my younger self in this. Is what I'm saying that there will be some utopia or that there will one day be a state of pure perfection? Absolutely fucking not. That does not exist. The universe doesn't work like that. It takes protons, neutrons, and electrons to create an atom, positive, negative, and neutral energies to combine together. A heartbeat goes up and down. That is life. We have to accept that it just is. What the universe just is. And not accept self-imposed ways of life. Stress that we are giving ourselves, that we're putting on others systemically, the artificial structures that separate humans through imaginary monetary means. Imaginary in the sense that paper dollars hold no meaning outside that which humans give it. What is a dollar worth in the next galaxy over? What is a credit card on Neptune? What is a credit score to the alien found in Mexico? And yes, there is other life in the universe. That this is only shocking to small minds. Have we found them on Earth? Is there evidence of that life? That remains to be seen. Not saying that was a real alien, but I do appreciate the fact that they made their findings public about the DNA. If that is real, time will tell. But the limited knowledge that we do have of the universe would suggest that there is most certainly life out there, as the universe is far too vast and too diverse for there not to be. To get to these next steps, to go further, we have to become more emotionally intelligent. And I encourage all who hear this to creatively express themselves more. Say what you have to say while you have the ability to say it. There will always be more ideas than time, just as there will always be more thoughts than spoken words. The only time is right now. Face that hard truth. Open yourself up to that vulnerability. Grow from it. You woke up today. With that simple act, you are already more resilient than the day before, if you choose to see it. The only time you have is right now. Choose to use it wisely. Go further. And if this is my last episode ever, and one of those times that will be true. So I want to say it now, because if not now, when? But I just want to say before I go, one last thing. And if it's the last thing I ever say, I want it to be this. Boom. And that was the recording of the 35th episode of the podcast. I appreciate you if you hung through that all. Work out every morning. Do not work out every morning, but I am getting to the gym today. Kind of fell off there when I traveled, but try to stay fit. Try to stay fit. That's all I'll say. I'm conscious of what I eat, what I intake. Oh, there it is. Bum ba da bum bum bum. And here we go. Yeah, we haven't even blasted off, but it is what it is. SOCKS. Let's add another tweet. There it is. Bum, 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 bum. Alright, there's a blast off tweet. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Bleace art. There we go. Now I want to do a reading. Now I want to do a little reading. A wee little reading. Save preview. There we go. Oh yeah, let me paste that in there too. Plenty of characters. Love that. Love that. Ah. Copy that, paste that. Copy this, paste that. Just little things. It's all in the details. All in the details. We've hit 413 subs on YouTube. Love to see it. Love to see it. Love to see it. Let's see if our friends are on Facebook. See if it posted here. There we go. Nice. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, let me grab this book. I gotta crank that for a minute. Gotta crank that soldier boy. Oh yeah, this is did want to get into the timeline. We can start with the introduction. The introduction. Let me try it. The introduction. Alright, let's see that robe reading. Let's see if we can update this. Artist motivation. Try to do a lot of things, everything, everywhere, all at once. Okay. So Grim Fairy Tales. Let me just down. Had to crank it for a minute. All right. Grim Fairy Tales. A lot of movies and future stories based on these fairy tales. If you don't know the Brothers Grimm, the Grimm brothers, definitely look them up. I do have a timeline. This does have a timeline in it as well. The first brother born in 1785, the other brother born in 1786. So way back, Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, and this Cinderella, the stepsister cuts off her heel, the other one cuts off her toe. So they're a bit darker. And I just want to start with this introduction for anybody that isn't familiar with the Grimm brothers and how and why I'm choosing to kick off these spooky robe readings with them. As I said, 1785, like they go way back. A lot is based on that. A lot of contemporary writers have read them. So and that's a lot of what I do too, is I will find someone that inspires me, and if they inspire me, I will do a deep dive and try to find what inspired them and what their sources were, and to read that. And so a lot of readings that I've done, I will pick up future readings, what I'll read next. It's like, oh wow, okay, and if it's a nonfiction, a lot of the times they will put directly in there what they're referencing, or there's like little notes at the bottom where you'll see like an asterisk or something, and they are referencing another book, and so they will put that reference in there, and it's like, oh wow, great, boom, that's my next reading. Dive into that. And what's playing on the screen here is an animation that I rendered out last night. It's the latest little meditation video. But yeah, appreciate you hanging out. Originally intended for adults, Children and Household Stories of the Brothers Grimm has become not only the world's most important collection of folk and fairy tales, but also the central work in the literary culture of childhood. Paradoxically, the tales have been criticized ever since they first appeared as inappropriate for children, too frank about sex, too violent, too dark. The Grimms themselves began censoring the sex as they brought out successive editions, and subsequent editors and translators have continued the process, modifying the violence as well, but the darkness remains. These tales of enchantment and ordeal contain terrifying encounters with witches, giants, and devouring beasts. Even the more benign tales usually involve suffering or danger, persecution by a cruel stepmother or abusive father, a battle with a demon, at the very least, marriage to a hedgehog or some other strange creature. There are confrontations with death itself, as in the three snake leaves, and the godfather death, and with the enchanted sleep that resembles it, as in the glass coffin and briar rose, the Sleeping Beauty story. Yet, in spite of these dark and deathly elements, or perhaps even because of them, the Grimm's tales have a compelling vitality. They are cruder, wilder, more violent, and more fun than the elegant and poignantly beautiful tales of the Grimm's Danish contemporary Hans Christian Andersen. Unlike Andersen, the Grimms did not invent new tales, but collected old ones with the intention of preserving the oral tradition of the German peasantry. Whether, in fact, they fulfilled that intention has been questioned. Their tales do afford a glimpse of a world of castles and forests, nobles and peasants, superstitious beliefs, and primitive practices that suggest origins at least as old as feudal Europe, and often much older. Some of the tales have been traced back through centuries by way of earlier versions until they disappear into prehistoric times. Residues of the social and material conditions of the societies from which they came can be found in the tales, but transformed as in a dream by wish, fear, and fantasy. Indeed, the tales often have the strange logic, the freedom from the constraints of time and space, and the abrupt and violent action that characterized dreams and that Freud attributed to what he called primary process, the kind of thinking that prevails in the unconscious and in childhood. The boundary between reality and fantasy is porous and unstable. Everything, including inanimate objects, is alive and responds magically to wishes and fears. There are mysteries and secrets everywhere, as in the lives of children, who are kept in the dark about fundamental realities: sex, death, money, and the whole complex mystery of their parents' desires and disappointments. The sense of mystery and the belief in the magical powers of thought never go away entirely, but live on in the adult unconscious, accounting for the inexhaustible appeal of fairy tales. They reappear continually in new forms, not only for children, but as sophisticated works for adults. Most German writers who came after the Grimms tried sooner or later to write a fairy tale. Even the stories of Franz Kafka are like fairy tales gone wrong. The patterns of fantasy and the narrative structures of the tales apparently satisfy profound psychological and aesthetic needs, endlessly generating new versions. Motifs from the Grimm's tales also appear in older classic works of fiction and drama, including some that could not possibly have been influenced by them, such as Shakespeare's plays in The Merchant of Venice. The riddle of the three caskets posed to the candidates for Portia's hand is like the wooer tests in many tales. In King Lear, the old king demands from his daughter all her love, including that owed to a husband. Like the incestuous king in the Grimm's tale Illyria, Many Furs, Lear's good and loving daughter Cordelia is persecuted, like Cinderella, by two wicked elder sisters. The Cinderella pattern is perhaps the most widespread of all. The transformation of a poor and insignificant girl into a belle is the theme of innumerable novels, plays, and films. In Jane Austen's Persuasion, 1818 for instance, Anne Elliot is treated like a servant by her hateful sisters, yet it is she who wins the love of princely Captain Wentworth. Isabel Archer, in Henry James' Portrait of a Lady, 1881, even has a fairy godmother, as Charles Perrault's Cinderella does, although the Grimm's does not. A male one who leaves her a fortune, enabling her, ironically, to choose the poorest but worst of her canonical three suitors. This figure of the mysterious benefactor, like the dwarf and the singing bone recurs frequently in the tales, and also in novels, especially those of Dickens. Magwitch and Great Expectations, for instance. Novels and plays differ from tales in many respects, notably in giving their characters rich inner lives, while in tales, psychological conflicts are worked out in action. Nonetheless, the parallels at the level of plot between tales and the larger and more fully developed forms are striking and could make a very long list. It seems that the Kinder and Hausmärchen form a great repository of narrative motifs that have circulated throughout Europe in various forms for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. How they made their way into the tales is only one of the many unresolved questions associated with the Grimms and their work. The brothers Grimm were born a year apart, Jacob in 1785 and Wilhelm in 1786, into the family of a prosperous lawyer in the German village of Hanau. When Jacob was 11 years old and Wilhelm 10, their circumstances changed radically after a sudden blow of fortune like those that befall children in the tales they would later produce. Their father died, precipitating his wife and 6 children. There had been 9, 3 died in infancy, into dire poverty. With the help of relatives, the boys managed to get an excellent education, although they were miserably lodged and fed, and with a kind of bizarre fairy tale logic, were denied financial grants to attend university on the grounds that they were too poor. Nonetheless, like the dogged, resilient heroes of their tales, they persevered. At the University of Marburg, they came under the influence of a distinguished legal scholar, Friedrich Karl von who studied German law in the context of its origins in the language and culture of the early Germanic peoples, inspiring the Grimms to apply the same methods to their studies in philology and literature. The brothers began collecting and transcribing old tales, believing that these remnants of a vanishing folk culture could offer some understanding of the origins of German poetry. The first volume of their collection was published in 1812, followed by a second in 1815. At first, the children's stories sold modestly, but it went through 7 editions during the Grimm's lifetime, eventually becoming the all-time world bestseller in the German language, second in Germany itself only to the Bible. After 1815, Jacob left most of the work on the tales to Wilhelm, but both brothers went on to become prodigious scholars, pioneers in the study of the grammar, history, and mythology of the Germanic languages, and in medieval studies. Jacob formulated Grimm's Law, a theory of consonant changes in the Germanic languages, and with Wilhelm began the great German dictionary that had reached the letter F at the time of Jacob's death, and was finally completed only in 1961. All told, Jacob published 21 books, Wilhelm 14, and the two together 8, in addition to many volumes of essays, notes, and letters. Both Grimms worked as librarians, and both became professors at the University of Göttingen. In 1837, when the new king of the state of Hanover dissolved parliament and required all state employees to swear allegiance to him, the Grimms declined to do so. They were fired and became known, along with 5 others who refused, as members of the Göttingen 7. Jacob was actually exiled from Hanover and was escorted to the border by an enthusiastic band of student supporters. In 1840, the brothers were appointed to the faculty of the University of Berlin. Both Grimms were elected to the parliament established at the time of the Revolution of 1848, but they withdrew from politics after the frustration of their hopes for German unification and democratic reform. They continued to live in the same household even after Wilhelm married and had children, and seem to have been inseparable until the death of Wilhelm in 1859. Jacob died 4 years later. The first edition had prefaces and scholarly notes, and was intended primarily for adults and for other scholars. It was the most ambitious and systematic collection of German folk tales to have appeared, if not the first. The passion for folklore was one of the principal currents of German Romanticism, with its interest in origins and its love of the spontaneous and the natural. Moreover, the search for the roots of an authentic German literary and linguistic identity had intense political as well as cultural significance. When the Grimms began their research, there was no unified German state, and German lands were under French occupation. When you start like seeing these like other words, it throws you off on just mundane words. I don't want to read this whole intro, as it gets deep. Shit gets deep. But just wanted to kind of preface and kind of intro the Grimms a bit. Kind of saw their life a little bit there. I want to get into a story, damn it. There we go. The Wolf and the Seven Little Goats. That's fun. Let's do it. Let's read that one. Why not? Let's start with it. Could do Clever Alice, which would get confused with Alice in Wonderland. There's just so many stories. Rumpelstiltskin, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Rapunzel, Cinderella, the Riddle, Little Red Riding Hood, The Handless Maiden, the Dwarfs, the Shoes which were danced to pieces. That's a good one. The Nix in the Pond, Cinderella. Let's do 101. Little Red Riding. Cinderella. Okay. Cinderella. It is then. Cinderella. Once upon a time, the wife of a certain rich man fell very ill. And as she felt her end drawing nigh, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "My dear child, be pious and good. And then the good God will always protect you, and I will look down upon you from heaven and think of you." Soon afterwards, she closed her eyes and died. Every day, the maiden went to her mother's grave and wept over it, and she continued to be good and pious. But when the winter came, the snow made a white covering over the grave, and in the springtime, when the sun had withdrawn this covering, the father took to himself another wife. This wife brought home with her 2 daughters, who were beautiful and fair in the face, but treacherous and wicked at heart. Then an unfortunate era began in the poor stepchild's life. "Shall the stupid goose sit in the parlor with us?" said the 2 daughters. "They who would eat bread must earn it. Out with the kitchen maid." So they took off her fine clothes and put upon her an old gray cloak and gave her wooden shoes for her feet. "See how the once proud princess is decked out now," said they, and they led her mockingly into the kitchen. Then she was obliged to work hard from morning to night, and to go out early to fetch water, to make the fire and cook and scour. The sisters treated her besides with every possible insult, derided her, and shook the peas and bees into the ashes, so that she had to pick them out again. At night, when she was tired, she had no bed to lie on, but was forced to sit in the ashes on the hearth, and because she looked dirty through this, they named her Cinderella. One day, it happened that the father wanted to go to the fair, so he asked his 2 daughters what they should bring them. "Some beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and precious stones," replied the other. "But you, Cinderella," said he, "what will you have?" "The first bow, father, that knocks against your hat and on your way homewards. Break it off for me," she replied. So he bought the fine dresses and the pearls and precious stones for his 2 stepdaughters, and on his return, as he rode through a green thicket, a hazel bow touched his hat, which he broke off and took with him. As soon as he got home, he gave his stepdaughters what they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the hazel branch. She thanked him very much, and going to her mother's grave, she planted the branch on it, and wept so long that her tears fell and watered it, so that it grew and became a beautiful tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went beneath it to weep and pray, and each time a little white bird flew on the tree. And if she wished aloud, then the little bird threw down to her whatever she wished for. After a time, it fell out that the king appointed a festival, which was to last 3 days, and to which all the beautiful maidens in the country were invited, from whom his son was to choose a bride. When the 2 stepdaughters heard that they might also appear, they were very glad, and calling Cinderella, they said, "Comb our hair, brush our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the festival at the king's palace." Cinderella obeyed, crying, because she wished to go with them to the dance, so she asked her stepmother whether she would allow her. "You, Cinderella," said she, "you are covered with dust and dirt. Will you go to the festival? You have no clothes or shoes. And how can you dance?" But as she urged her request, the mother said at last, "I have now shaken into the ashes a tub full of beans. If you have picked them up again in 2 hours, you shall go." Then the maiden left the room and went out at the back door in the garden and called out, "You tame pigeons and doves and all you birds of heaven, come and help me to gather the good in the tub, and the bad ones you may eat." Presently, in at the kitchen window came 2 white pigeons, and after them the doves, and soon all the birds under heaven flew chirping in and down upon the ashes. Then they began to pick, and gathered all the good seeds into the tub. And scarcely an hour had passed when all was completed, and the birds flew away again. Then the maiden took the tub to the stepmother, rejoicing at the thought that she might now go to the festival. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, you have no clothes and cannot dance. You will only be laughed at." As she began to cry, the stepmother said, "If you can pick up quite clean 2 tubs of beans, which I throw amongst the ashes in 1 hour, you shall accompany them." And she thought to herself, "She will never manage it." As soon as the 2 tubs had been shot into the ashes, Cinderella went out the back door into the garden and called out as before, "You tame pigeons and doves and all you birds under heaven, come and help me to gather the good ones into the tubs, and the bad ones you may eat." Presently, in at the kitchen window came 2 white pigeons, and after them the doves, And soon all the birds under heaven flew chirping in and down upon the ashes. Then they began to pick, and gathered all the good seeds into the tubs. And scarcely had half an hour passed before all was picked up, and off they flew again. The maiden now took the tubs to the stepmother, rejoicing at the thought that she could go to the festival. But the mother said, "It does not help you a bit. You cannot go with us, for you have no clothes and cannot dance. We should be ashamed of you." Thereupon she turned her back upon the maiden and hastened away with her 2 proud daughters. As there was no one at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave under the hazel tree and said, "Rustle and shake yourself, dear tree, and silver and gold throw down to me." Then the bird threw down a dress of gold and silver, and silken slippers ornamented with silver. These Cinderella put on in great haste, and then she went to the ball. Her sisters and stepmother did not know her at all, and took her for some foreign princess, as she looked so beautiful in her golden dress. For of Cinderella they thought not, but that she was sitting at home picking the beans out of the ashes. Presently the prince came up to her, and, taking her by the hand, led her to the dance. He would not dance with anyone else, and even would not let go of her hand, so that when anyone else asked her to dance, he said, "She is my partner." They danced till evening, when she wished to go home, but the prince said, "I will go with you and see you safe," for he wanted to see to whom the maiden belonged. She flew away from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. So the prince waited till the father came, whom he told that the strange maiden had run to the pigeon house. Then the stepmother thought, could it be Cinderella? And they brought an axe wherewith the prince might cut open the door, but no one was found within. And when they came into the house, there lay Cinderella in her dirty clothes among the ashes, and an oil lamp was burning in the chimney. For she had jumped quickly out onto the other side of the pigeon house, and had run to the hazel tree, where she had taken off her fine clothes and laid them on the grave. And the bird had taken them again. And afterwards she had put on her little gray cloak and seated herself among the ashes in the kitchen. The next day, when the festival was renewed, and her stepmother and her sisters had set out again, Cinderella went to the hazel tree and sang as before, "Rustle and shake yourself, dear tree, and silver and gold throw down on me." Then the bird threw down a much more splendid dress than the former, and when the maiden appeared at the ball, everyone was astonished at her beauty. The prince, however, who had waited till she came back, took her hand and would dance with no one else. And if others came and asked, he replied as before, "She is my partner." As soon as evening came, she wished to depart, and the prince followed her, wanting to see into whose house she went. And she sprang away from him and ran into the garden behind the house. Therein stood a fine large tree, on which hung the most beautiful pears, and the boughs rustled as though a squirrel was among them, but the prince could not see whence the noise proceeded. He waited, however, till the father came and told him, "The strange maiden has escaped from me, and I think she has climbed up into this tree." The father thought to himself, "Can it be Cinderella?" And taking an axe, he chopped down the tree, but there was no one on it. When they went into the kitchen, there lay Cinderella among the ashes, as before, for she had sprung down on the other side of the tree, and having taken her beautiful clothes again to the bird upon the hazel tree, she had put on once more her old gray cloak. The third day, when her stepmother and her sisters had set out, Cinderella went out again to her mother's grave and said, "Rustle and shake yourself, dear tree, and silver and gold throw down to me." Then the bird threw down to her a dress which was more splendid and glittering than she had ever had before, and the slippers were all golden. When she arrived at the ball, they knew not what to say, for wonderment. And the prince danced with her alone as at first, and replied to everyone who asked her hand, "She is my partner." As soon as evening came, she wished to go, and as the prince followed her, she ran away so quickly that he could not overtake her. But he had contrived a stratagem, and spread the whole way with pitch, so that it happened, as the maiden ran down, her left slipper came off. The prince took it up, and saw it was small and graceful, and quite golden. So the following morning he went with it to his father, and said, "My bride shall be no other than she whose foot this golden slipper fits." The two sisters were glad of this, for they had beautiful feet, and the elder went with it to her chamber to try it on, while her mother stood by. She could not, however, get her great toe into it, and the shoe was much too small. But the mother, reaching a knife, said, "Cut off your toe, for if you are queen, you need not go any longer on foot." The maiden cut it off, and squeezed her foot into the shoe, and concealing the pain she felt, went down to the prince. Then he placed her as his bride upon the horse, and rode off. And as they passed by the grave, there sat two little doves upon the hazel tree, singing, backwards peep, there's blood upon the shoe. The shoe's too small, and she behind is not the bride for you." Then the prince looked behind and saw the blood flowing. So he turned his horse back and took the false bride home again, saying she was not the right one. Then the other sister must needs fit on the shoe. So she went to her chamber and got her toes nicely into the shoe, but the heel was too large. The mother, reaching a knife, said, "Cut a piece off your heel, for when you become queen, you need not go any longer on foot." She cut a piece off her heel, squeezed her foot into the shoe, and, concealing the pain she felt, went down to the prince. Then he put her upon his horse, and his bride rode off. And as they passed the hazel tree, there sat two little doves, who sang, backwards peep, there's blood upon the shoe. The shoe's too small, and she behind is not the bride for you." Then he looked behind and saw the blood trickling from her shoe, and that the stocking was dyed quite red. So he turned his horse back and took the false bride home again, saying, Neither is this one the right maiden. Have you no other daughter?" "No," replied the father, "except a little Cinderella, daughter of my deceased wife, who cannot possibly be the bride." The prince asked that she might be fetched, but the stepmother said, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. I dare not let her be seen." But the prince would have his way, so Cinderella was called, and she, first washing her hands and face, went in and curtsied to the prince, who gave her the golden shoe. Cinderella sat down on a stool, and, taking off her heavy wooden shoes, put on the slipper, which fitted her to a shade. And as she stood up, the prince looked in her face, and recognizing the beautiful maiden with whom he had danced, exclaimed, "This is my rightful bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were amazed and white with rage. But the prince took Cinderella upon his horse and rode away, and as they came up to the hazel tree, the two little white doves sang, backwards peep, there's no blood on the shoe. It fits so nice, and she behind is the true bride for you." And as they finished, they flew down and lighted upon Cinderella's shoulders. And there they remained. And the wedding was celebrated with great festivities, and the two sisters were smitten with blindness as a punishment for their wickedness. And that is Cinderella by the Grimm brothers. Cutting off a toe. That mother Okay, you know who that mother is? You know who that mother is? Who's the hardest woman in show business? Hardest working woman in show business today? She'd do that to Kim K. Kim K, cut off that goddamn toe. Make that fucking porno, bitch. Better work, bitch. Better work that fucking camera, bitch. Yeah. I think she's done some cutting of heels and cutting of toes. But yeah. That's what I have for today. We got into a lot. We got the podcast recorded, which will be out on all platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Blog post will be up, Bleace.com. Check it out. This animation that you've been seeing here will be up on YouTube, at Bleace on YouTube. Please subscribe if you're not already. But yeah, till next time, peeps, which will be tomorrow. This week, we'll be going hard on these streams. And hopefully for the remainder of the month. But I hope you have a great start to your week. I hope this was a bit motivating. Hope you're feeling that energy. Get out there and just do it. But yeah, appreciate you, peeps. Until next time.